Nintendo and Square have had a tumultuous history. Everything was hunky-dory until that Hiroshi Yamauchi started running his mouth, insisting on a hyper-conservative approach to Nintendo's Ultra 64. Square was more than a little put off by this. For their upcoming masterwork, Final Fantasy VII, they were going to need a lot of space, and to put a game of that size onto a cartridge would have cost a mint. Gamers weren't ready to pay $200 for an RPG. Not until .hack at least. So the development of Final Fantasy VII was moved onto Sony's new competing platform. The two sides sat in their separate corners for 7 years, avoiding all contact until the advent of the Game Boy Advance. Here was a chance for Square to return to their heyday, crafting quality RPGs on a revival of Super Nintendo-style architecture. The stage was set and the players took their places, then walked in place awaiting their turns. Final Fantasy Tactics was back, and it was back on a Nintendo platform. But the game drops you into a school? There are cars on the road? What the hell? Yes, the tutorial itself is a snowball fight introducing you to the mechanics and ranged combat. Then some kids read a book that kind of looks like this Final Fantasy game that they're such fans of, and pow! They're an Evilus. It's quite a system shock, and our quote-unquote hero accidentally says the wrong thing to the wrong lizard. The only way for March, or Marsh, or Marche, or however you pronounce it, to survive, is to join the nearby clan, thus gaining their protection and being introduced into the job-centric, mission-based, law-dominated meat and potatoes of the game. But this isn't your usual Final Fantasy Tactics game. If you could even say there was one to begin with, this was the second one they made after all. This Evilus is home to a multitude of races, with many classes being race-specific. Want your main character to be a Dragoon or Gunner? Tough luck. Always dreamed of having a Bunny Girl Blue Mage? No dice. It may be frustrating, but diversity is enforced with an iron fist and potential jail time. Now seriously, the judge who barges in on every battle sets in place a series of rules. Break the law and you're handed a yellow card, or a red card for repeated infractions. I've got it, this is where all the cards from Nintendo World Cup must have gone. They ended up in an RPG! Sometimes the law can make fights nigh unto impossible, especially if you're going into the game with a single-minded focus. You need options, you need variety. Fortunately, with 34 jobs, each with their own spate of abilities, you're never for want of alternatives. And if that doesn't work, you can find anti-law cards to delete this legislation right from the get-go. Even though the sprites themselves are pretty small, there's a lot of detail packed into each one. It doesn't hurt that the game follows, generally speaking, the classic Final Fantasy stylizations, so you need only look for the yellow hat to find your black mages. The music's quite advanced, literally, for what you'd expect to hear from something as tiny as the GBA. And in a rather unique and thoughtful touch, the colors can be optimized for display on either LCD or standard television screens. Yes, it's an adventure that expects you to play it on a Game Boy player. And you'll have plenty of time to do so. There's 300 missions in total, not to mention the occasional counter with roving bands of miscreants, plus multiplayer support for trading mission-related items or just joining a friend for some good old tactical beatings. As with most TRPGs, there's plenty to do in each game. More so than anything else, though, this game was an apology, a reconciliation between Square and the Big N. See what happens when you give peace a chance?